Most filmmakers don't understand sales agent deals, and they usually only learn how they actually work after they've already signed a deal. But by that point, the die has been cast. Your film could be locked up for 12 to 15 years, sometimes even longer. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what a sales agent deal actually looks like, how these agreements are structured, and what you should be negotiating before you sign anything. I'll also show you some red flags to keep an eye out for and some green lights to also keep in mind when deciding which sales agent to actually work with. Because if you understand how these deals work, you can approach them with confidence and you can give your film the best chance of actually recouping its investment. Hi, I'm Alexi Uzas. I'm a film producer and I help filmmakers understand how independent films actually get financed, produced, and sold. I've produced or EP'd 12 feature films and I've mentored over 100 filmmakers on their filmmaking journey. If you're working on your first feature, subscribe to this channel. I post a new video every week. Now let's take a look at how sales agent deals actually work. I'm excited about this one. This is in response to someone who left a comment on my YouTube channel who wanted me to actually provide one of these breakdowns. So I'm excited to take you through it step by step. If you have any topics that you want me to cover, post them in the comments below. I read those and they do inform the topics and videos that I make on it. All right, so let's go. Main deal points. When you start negotiating with a sales agent, there are really only a handful of terms, deal points, that really matter. So these are the main ones that you want to focus on early. And this is when you've just pitched a film to them and you're starting to enter into some sort of, negotiation, and really you want them to make an offer on your film, right? So the first one is a minimum guarantee. It's also called an MG for short. So you may have heard that as jargon, but it's basically the amount that the sales agent pays you up front as an advance against the future revenue that they're going to generate on the film. Now, for a debut feature film, the range is usually somewhere between $0 and $200,000, depending on the project. One sec. I'm just going to turn my phone off. Number two is the term. So this is simply how long the agreement lasts. So you enter into an agreement with someone. What is the term of that agreement? Now, most sales agents' agreements do run for a number of years, and it's usually between 12 to 25, right? But that's why you want to be careful about what you're signing, because it can lock you up for a long period. And what I want to do with each of these deal points, which you can see, is just give you a range, and then I'm going to take you through how you can actually negotiate them. Number three is the sales commission. So this is the percentage the sales agent is going to take from every sale that they make. And typical commissions are somewhere between 15% and 20%. So that's the commission that they're going to charge for the service that they provide, which is to go out there and sell your film to local distributors around the world. And then number four is the marketing expense cap. So this is the amount that the sales agent can actually charge against your film for its promotional activities. And usually this is something like 15K, anywhere up to around 50K USD. So those costs actually get recouped from revenue before you see any money. Number five, which is the final one of like the main terms, it's territory. So this simply refers to which countries the sales agent has the exclusive right to sell your film in. Sometimes it's a specific group of territories, like a sales agent could just have North America, right? Most commonly though, it's worldwide, and that worldwide may exclude your local territory. So for example, in Australia, where I make films, we usually exclude Australia from the sales agent deal because we can go and do that deal with a distributor directly. So one important thing to understand here, if a sales agent sends you an offer that only contains an MG, ask them to provide the full deal terms before you start negotiating the MG, because MG alone doesn't tell you very much. And as the saying goes, the devil is in the details. Okay, so you want to have all those points, all those main deal terms before you start negotiating. Now, why is that? Well, in any negotiation, it's rarely just about that headline number. And so we don't want to focus purely on how much a sales agent is going to pay only, right? That's why you want to negotiate these deal points before you start moving into any type of like longer form agreement. You've got to get these deal terms down. So a useful way to think about it is like a system of levers and pulleys, right? So if you pull one down to improve your position, another one may move in the opposite direction. So let's use just a hypothetical, right? Let's say you've raised a bunch of private equity and you don't actually need a big MG to finance your film, or maybe you're self-financing it, right? So in that case, you don't need this big MG. That gives you some leverage, right? Because now you can say, well, I want a lower MG in exchange for lower commission, right? Because now I'm saying you can pay me less, but in exchange for paying me less, I want better commission. So if the film performs well, that means you would keep more revenue from every sale. Now let's flip it. If you do need a larger MG to close your finance because you're going to use that money to make the film, the sales agent is probably going to push for a higher commission and higher expense caps. So that negotiation becomes about balancing those levers, right? So you're not only negotiating on price, you can have lower term, right? You can have a lower marketing expense, and all these things are going to make your deal more attractive. So you want to think about what you can pull and push depending on your film. Now, once the main deal points are agreed, you need to look closely at the fine print. So when you agree on those main terms, you're going to get a long form agreement, and that's where you got to go through the details. So let's go through them. Number one, distribution territory. So sometimes a sales agent will also have a local distribution arm, and in that case, they may include their own territory. So for example, if a sales agent is based in the UK, they may have a UK distribution arm, and they may include that as part of the sales agreement. Well, that means that you're not then able to sell that film separately in that territory, or that sales agent isn't going to go and sell that film to a UK distributor. They're going to distribute it. But if that territory is included, you want to make sure that the MG actually reflects that added value. So you got to be careful there, because if they try and include that territory, that's one less territory that you could have sold for. So you want to use that as a reason to say, okay, that's fine, but you got to pay me more. Next one, number two, is sales approval thresholds, right? So some agreements allow the sales agent to close deals without your approval if they're above a certain price. But if the price drops below a certain threshold, they may need your sign off, right? Now, if that threshold is set too low, your film could potentially be sold cheaply without your involvement. So you just want to look at, do you have approval over all deals? If you don't have approval over all deals, when do they not need your approval, and are you okay with that? Number three is audit rights. So most agreements allow producers to audit the sales agent's books, but it's often like a limited right. It may only last for a certain number of years, and usually it has to be paid for by you, the producer. So you just want to make sure that you actually have a meaningful ability to verify their revenue reporting. It's the same for distribution agreements. This is an important clause. If you're using a collection agency, then this is less important. I would still have it in the agreement, but usually the collection agency will be the one monitoring the revenue. Next one is delivery obligations. So before the sales agent actually pays the advance, so on delivery, they usually pay whatever is left to pay on the MG, they'll require a large package of materials, right? So they may pay 20% when they sign and then 80% when you deliver. But that doesn't just include the film. It includes chain of title documents, cast and crew contracts, all your music licenses, right? There's usually a big fat list of deliverables that you need to include. And it's not just the film masters, although that's a huge component of it. There are a bunch of other deliverables that you're going to need to provide. Stills and promotional materials, that's another one. Now, if those materials aren't delivered properly, or if your film fails a quality control check, so a QC check, then the sales agent can likely withhold or delay paying the advance, right? So what you want to make sure of, particularly if you've already got a finished film, is you want to make sure that you can actually deliver, right? And if you're getting a sales agent during financing, then you want to make sure that your post quote or your legal quote includes all those deliverables that you need to provide. All right, let's move on to red flags. So now that you understand the deal and how it works, let's talk about how you choose a sales agent. So, number one is reputation, right? Best thing that you can do is talk to other producers, and ideally producers who have worked with that sales agent before. Otherwise, even just producers who are active in the market and know the inside scoop about different sales agents, that's also going to be very beneficial. And it's actually really simple to do this. You just look at the sales agent's catalog, you find the producers of those films and reach out to them. Most producers are going to be willing to talk producer to producer, probably off record over the phone, because generally you want to help each other, right? Now, if a sales agent has a bad reputation, don't work with them. It's as simple as that. Now, not every company's perfect, right? So maybe if you hear one or two bad stories or not so great stories, you got to assess, right? But if you start hearing just negative, 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 and like absolutely do not like stay away, then heed that advice because I learned that the hard way. Now, next one is inactivity. So if their website hasn't been updated in years, if they're not attending film markets, if they don't seem that active in the business anymore, it's a bit of a red flag. So it's something to pay attention to. You want a sales agent who is fully engaged in the market, who is going to every single market on the calendar or has someone going to those markets and is selling product. That's a big, it is a big red sign if they're just not doing that, because then you got to wonder, well, how are they going to be able to sell your film? Next one is just like no similar films. So you want to prioritize the sales agents who have actually sold films similar to yours, because that tells you that they already have buyers in their network who are looking for those kinds of projects. And if they haven't sold a film like yours, but they still want to take it on, you have to wonder whether they actually have those buyers waiting, or if your film is a bit of a test case for them, right? Maybe they're trying to move into a new genre and your film is the guinea pig, but then those buyers might not exist for them. All right, now let's talk about green lights. So what are some positive signals that you could see that would make you want to work with a sales agent? Well, again, reputation, right? So just as it can be a red flag, it can also be a green flag. If you consistently hear good things about a sales agent from multiple producers or people in the industry, it's usually a strong sign that the company is reputable, and that you're okay to move ahead with working with them. The other one is recent wins, right? So have they done some recent big sales, or do they have, consistent articles in Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter that actually show their deals? Because if a sales agent has had a strong recent run with films, two things tend to happen. First is that their coffers are probably a little bit fuller, right? They have a bit more money to spend now, which means they're going to be more willing to invest in new projects and also invest into their own business and growing their business. The second is that their confidence is going to be high, right? Sales, like many things, is really a skill that feeds off confidence. I would say even more so, sales is like, it's if you get on a hot streak with sales, it can make all the difference. Next thing to look at as a green light is track record, right? So have they been around for a long time? Or if it's a newer company, it's okay. But do the people who are now running it, the owners of that new company, do they have serious experience in sales? Have they worked at some big companies, and have they worked in sales over a long period of time? You want to make sure that the team has the skill set and the relationships to actually deliver. But remember, tenure or track record isn't enough on its own. It has to be paired with reputation, which we just spoke about. So to wrap this up, sales agent deals are really a core part of independent film business and independent film financing. So you've got to understand this stuff. Unfortunately, most filmmakers don't really understand how they work until they're already inside one of these deals. And that's what happened with me. It wasn't until it actually happened that then all this new information happened. Now I've had time to learn all this. And so if you take the time to understand these deal points, understand the negotiation levers that you can pull, and understand what the fine print and additional clauses are, you're going to be in a much stronger position when the time actually comes to attach a sales agent. And that can make a huge difference in terms of whether you get a good deal, whether you work with a great company, and whether your film has a good chance of actually recouping its investment. Now, if you're currently packaging or you're financing your feature film and you want help navigating the process, you can apply to work with me just by following the link in the description below. See you on the next one.